Hello, everybody. Welcome to Town Hall. It's great to have you with us on this quasi-spring day. I claim that it's spring because, I'm in my little fishbowl office here today, and I'm looking out at the courtyard that has over on the way to the Boxer Library. The two Japanese maples there have leaves. They're not big, but there are leaves, which I take as a positive sign. I suppose the tornado warning last night also a sign, not necessarily a positive sign, but it was dramatic. I live in an apartment on the fifth floor. The lightning to the southwest was really, really dramatic. So anybody have? I presume everybody. My understanding is everybody was okay. But did you see anything of the storm last night?
A lot of rain. We had a lot of rain up in Wisconsin.
Oh, okay. Oh, there were a lot of
Yes.
clouds headed that way, weren't there?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Similar,
it would
so
go
lots
ahead,
of
Shelley.
some pretty good lightning, but other than that,
I mean, yeah, it looked like it was not a good time to be on Lake Michigan.
No, not
not a
at
good.
all.
It looked really, it looked, my wife and I watched the sort of marine reports from the lake just because they're funny. And they use language that, is from the 19th century, like mariners should stay in port, that kind of stuff. It was certainly a mariner should stay in port kind of day. We
Yeah.
treat it a little bit like you might send your kids off to something and, say, have fun storming the castle. This is the same kind of concept. It's not the Princess Bride, but same kind of concept. All right, well, I will get us started a little bit. I'm really excited to have, we're talking about the Healthy Minds survey that we do here at Rosalind Franklin University. I'm really looking forward to that conversation. This is a version sort of the conversation that happened at President's Council last month, but I think it's really important that we do it for everybody. So we have Shelley Brzezicki, our Dean of Students, Madeline Wong, who's the CMS 29, and Amber Kayak, sorry, Amber Wyack. I'll just be honest. I mean, Amber was helping me with the name and said it's like kayak, so that's what I wrote down. So that's what I said. Anyway, Amber Wyack, Executive Director for Campus Life. My update this week, I think after the board meeting last week, the week before, everything was a little bit more quiet, but I did spend some quality time on community engagement, particularly around cash allowances and programs like RX Kids, that I worked on in Michigan. I met with folks from the Economic Security Project, which is in California and Illinois. They work on these sorts of programs. I also talked to some of our philanthropic partners and met with Live Well Lake County. That was a lot of really interesting conversations as I try to learn more and more about how programs and politics work in Illinois and Lake County, and I really appreciated that opportunity. Um, we work on the budget, so we have $1 million hole to fill, and which is I'm going to say I'm optimistic, but of course you do have to figure that out. So we're we're looking at a whole range of things. Some of it is there's a fair amount of uncertainty if you've been watching the news as to what the stock market is doing and economic volatility, because a large marker of the last bit of our budget is how well did the endowment do. And so yeah, every little change with that has a little bit of a calculation for us. We actually calculate what would happen in a worst case scenario if the stock market crashes to try to figure out what would that mean to how we pay off our loans, how we fund ourselves, how does that all work? So Gavin Ferry actually does a stress test where he goes through and imagines what would happen to the enrollment or to the endowment, and then what would that mean to us, particularly around around rating agencies and what that means to our bonds and how we pay off our loans and things like that. Beyond that, we also did a little bit of work this week getting ready. If we have a campaign consultant for a philanthropic campaign coming to help us out as we think about how to raise more money for things like scholarships and faculty lines, so endowed faculty and programs and space. So that's been really interesting work, and I really appreciate the work of the institutional investment team led by George Ratton. Anyway, we have a consultant, Campbell, and we'll be meeting with them in the next short while to sort of start some of our thoughts about that. I talked to the board about it some last week. Um, we won't be making any real decisions for another until the board meets again in June, but we will be doing a lot of work. So that is what I have in the way of something of an update. It's always more fun when there are questions. So by all means, put questions into the Q&A and I will be happy to answer them about this or anything else. So, but Shelley, you did a presentation about this. We had a nice conversation at President's Cabinet. I think it's really important to broaden that. And, once again, we'll be happy to answer questions about it. But Shelley, let me turn the screen over to you.
Great. And everyone somebody confirm on the panel that you can
Yep,
see what
looks right. Looks right.
Perfect. So we are here today to share with you the Healthy Mind survey results. This survey was done at the very end of 25 for us. So the Healthy Minds Network is part of the University of Michigan, or that's where it's housed, and it benchmarks the results of our institution against that with our peer institutions. So they have a fall version and then a spring version that can be done. We participated in their fall version and did that at the very end of their fall administration this year, at the very end of December, or November into December. So we are awaiting our peer results, but today we're going to share with you the results comparing ourselves to our 2023 version of this. And this is a survey that we are now doing every other year for all students here on campus, and has given us some wonderful data and really good opportunities to see where we need to increase services, what the need is of the student population, and ensure we're doing our best to meet it. So with that, I'll turn it over to Amber.
Perfect. Thanks, Shelley. So RFU participated in the survey for the second time, and we had 25% of the student population participate in this survey, which is up from 22% in 2023. We'll continue to administer this survey every other year moving forward, like Shelley had mentioned. We did change how we administered the survey this year by utilizing an open link instead of a panel, which allowed us more flexibility with marketing and increased participation. So listed on this slide by program, you can see the percentage of each program that responded if the N was greater than 5. Counseling access and utilization was a major theme within the Healthy Mind survey. So 90% of RFU students stated that they know where to access resources should they need them. And this is consistent with our 2023 results, where 90% of students also stated that they know where to go to access resources. The survey also showed that 19% of students who participated reported actively receiving counseling or therapy during the academic year, which is similar to our 2023 results as well. And this correlates very well with our student counseling services utilization for the 24-25 academic year, where 19% of students access the resources. 53% of respondents reported receiving mental health treatment at some point in their lives, and this is slightly lower than our 2023 results of 56%. And then the survey also asked about barriers to receiving services. 31% of RFU respondents reported receiving fewer or no services due to lack of time, and this is slightly down from 2023 at 33%. The Healthy Mind survey also conducted screenings for depression and anxiety. The results shown here indicate the number of respondents who were determined to have moderate to severe depression based on the screening questions. At RFU, 21% of respondents reported having moderate to severe depression, which is slightly lower than our 2023 results of 24%. Depression was measured using the Patient Health Questionnaire 9, the PHQ, a 9-item instrument based on the symptoms provided in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Mental Disorders for a major depressive episode within the past 2 weeks. So following the standard algorithm for interpreting the PHQ-9, symptom levels are categorized as severe, which is a score above 15, moderate, which is between 10 and 14, and mild to minimum, which is a score under 10. Similarly, for anxiety, 25% of students were determined to have moderate to severe anxiety via the anxiety screening, the GAD-7, which is a 7-item screening tool for screening the severity measuring of generalized anxiety orders within the past 2 weeks. Following that algorithm for interpreting, the symptom levels are categorized as severe anxiety, moderate anxiety, or neither. As it relates to impairment from depression, 28% of RFU respondents reported academic impairment 3 or more days per month, which is down from 2023, or 41% reported an impairment.
All right, and the next question or category that was looked at was positive mental health, and this was measured by using the flourishing scale, which is an 8-item short survey where people rate their perception of their success to 8 different questions. They rate the questions between 1 and 7, and then that score is determined to C. This year, 55% of respondents were considered flourishing, and that's actually up from 2023, where 45% were considered flourishing. In this questionnaire, it's questions like, I lead a purposeful and meaningful life. I actively contribute to the happiness and well-being of others. I'm a good person and I have a good life. I'm optimistic about my future. I'm respected in what I do. And so those are some of the indicators that are used or questions that are used in this. And to see that go up is a positive sign for our community as well.
Loneliness is another area that is evaluated on this survey, and all of these indicators did improve several percentage points from 2023. Social connection remains an important factor for student well-being, and although severe loneliness improved since 2023, many students still report feeling lonely at times. In the What Brings You Joy open-ended question, students responded by consistently naming that social connections, pets, crafts as categories that bring them joy. So we have expanded our therapy dog visits, our pop-up wellness events, and launched our Crafternoon Tea to help students connect with one another.
All right, another category that's looked at on the Healthy Mind survey is substance use. So one of the categories that was rated, we had a 4% of respondents say that they are using stimulants, and this is specifically either more than a prescription that they have or off prescription, meaning they don't have a prescription for the medication, 4%, and that's slightly up from 2023 where it was 3%. Interestingly as well, cannabis use was actually reported as less than in 2023, with 11% of respondents now saying that they've used a cannabis product in the last 30 days compared to 17% in 2023. So this has been an area that we have been seeing grow on campus, especially with the legalization in the state of Illinois. But the use of any cannabis product as part of our community, due to the federal guidelines for drug-free schools, also remains that we are not able to allow any use of cannabis on campus. Madeline, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, so here's today's call to action. The Healthy Mind survey found that 29% of students at RFU reported experiencing food insecurity at some level. This represents a significant concern, particularly within health professional training environments where students are expected to maintain high levels of academic performance, as well as provide high-quality care to patients. Inconsistent access to adequate nutrition among students has well-documented negative effects on stress, academic performance, and overall well-being. This issue is reflected by a growing body of literature on food insecurity in higher education, including among health professional students. These studies outline associations between food insecurity and increased levels of psychological distress and burnout, as well as impaired academic performance. Additionally, in Illinois, able-bodied students without children must work at least 20 hours per week to qualify for SNAP benefits or food stamps, which is not a realistic solution for many health professional students who already juggle demanding academic programs and extracurriculars. I know for myself personally, it would be very difficult to work 20 hours a week, though I know some students are able to do it. Current efforts at RFU, including the provision of emergency food kits and resource awareness on Engage, are important first steps to combating this issue and providing immediate supports to students. However, the continued reported prevalence of food insecurity among students demonstrates the need to expand these interventions and implement more sustainable university-wide solutions. There's a strong precedent for this approach at higher education institutions across the country. Locally at DePaul and the University of Illinois, they've implemented student food pantry models, including pop-up pantries, which are accessible, reduce stigma, and are well integrated into student life. Existing literature also outlines clear strategies for implementation, including conducting an in-depth needs assessment, establishing a well-defined operational workflow, and utilizing targeted communications to students. There are multiple potential funding mechanisms that could support the development and long-term sustainability of these initiatives, and bear with me as I read out these names. And several of these are federal and state programs, including the Community Facilities Direct Loan and Grant Program in Illinois, the Illinois Local Food Bank Infrastructure Grant, and the Illinois Farm to Food Bank Capacity Building Grant, just to name a few. Addressing food insecurity at RFU is not only about improving access to food for students, but it's also about providing the best care to our patients and the community that we serve. Expanding RFU's efforts to increase food security among students aligns well with institutional priorities and will ensure that all students have the foundational support that they need to thrive.
Great, thank you, Madeline. One of the additional areas that there's a screening for within the Healthy Mind Survey is disordered eating. And so in 2025, we actually saw an increase in the number of students who screened positively for potential of having an eating disorder. So this was up to 23% in 2025, and it was only 9% in 2023. One of the things that differed between 2023 and 2025 was the instrument that was used in the screening. In 2023, the SCOFF, which is Sick Control 1 Fat Food, was utilized as a screening. And if users answered yes to 3 or more of those questions, they were considered as potentially needing more diagnosis to see whether an eating disorder existed. In 2025, the SDE, which is the Screening for Disordered Eating, a 5-item tool, again, where 3 or more questions of answering yes indicated that more diagnosis could be done to see whether or not an eating disorder existed. One of the interesting things is on both of those different instruments, one of the questions is almost exactly word for word the same, and that's, do you believe yourself to be fat when others say you are thin? In 2025, 35% of students said yes to that question, and that's compared to in 2023, 17% said yes to that particular question. So that one was up double. The other most common questions that students indicated yes to are, do you often feel the desire to eat when you're emotionally upset or stressed? 51% of students said yes to that. And then, are you often preoccupied with a desire to be thinner? 41% of students said yes to that. So it's interesting to see our student counseling service noted in fall too, just a slight increase in need or presentation of issues around disordered eating with patients. And so that's something to just know that we'll be increasing our services, our education, and screenings that you may see in student counseling and student health around that to ensure that students are getting the support they need around disordered eating.
Students were also asked how they would describe their financial situation right now. 35% of students reported often or always experiencing financial stress, and this is down from 2023, where 44% of students reported this. With the changes federally, finding ways to ease financial stress will be especially important. Changes in the financial aid cost of living for the 2025-2026 did help ease this, and there are additional cost of living funds being allocated for 2026-2027 academic year.
Another category that's looked at on the Healthy Mind survey is campus climate and discrimination. In this particular screening, it indicated in the past 12 months, have you been treated unfairly at your school because of any of the following? And this included here on campus that you can see each of these results went down by almost half or more than half, depending on the indicator. And so this is showing that our students are feeling more welcome and part of our campus community, and also feeling like they're being treated fairly and equitably here on our campus, which is all good indicators.
When we look at outreach as it relates to mental health access and resources, we have continued to offer additional training opportunities, including our Question, Persuade, Refer QPR training and mental health first aid training as great opportunities for employees and students to help identify mental health challenges and refer appropriately. This shows that students are likely to reach out to a variety of individuals for assistance, and ensuring that those individuals have the appropriate knowledge to refer will be imperative to our student success. And in the open-ended question, students were also asked, what suggestions do you have to improve wellness areas on campus? And students are looking for more accessible wellness spaces across campus, especially additional treadmills with standing desks, updated gym equipment, and evening fitness classes. They are also looking for more study and relaxation spaces that are both outdoors and indoors. And they're looking for more affordable, healthy food options. So overall, this really reflects a need for spaces that better support both our students, both physically and their mental wellness on a day-to-day basis for our students. And on this slide, you can see the top 10 categories that were listed for students on what their suggestions are for wellness.
And then how do we use this data and what do we do with it? Well, we will be working with our data to make improvements and help make decisions on what additional services are here on campus. We will anxiously be awaiting our peer comparison this summer. We should receive those at the very end of June. That will allow us to compare our RFU results to our peer institutions. In this case, we are compared to graduate programs that are professional in nature. So that ends up to be within the healthcare field and the law field are those comparable institutions. We have also shared program-specific results with all of the deans and programs here at RFU so that they can see their direct results program by program to be able to see how those needs differ of students in different programs and how to best support students in all of those programs. We're looking to expand student basic needs, as Madeline talked about, and collaborating with food security partners and availability for financial and food resources here on campus, which are large presenting factors. And then we'll have additional QPR training and mental health first aid training, because we know that students will go to a variety of sources, whether it's a peer of theirs, a faculty member, a staff member within their department, someone within student success and wellness, or another individual, and we want to make sure they're getting those help. You will see another QPR opportunity during the month of May, which is Mental Health Awareness month. So there will be an upcoming training available in the month of May. And then we'll be developing targeted outreach around programming and loneliness and programs that are available during that time period, as well as additional programming and education on disordered eating and body image, which seems to be a presenting factor or growing need here on campus as well. So with that, I am actually going to stop sharing, and we are happy to answer questions about the data, observations that individuals are seeing, anything that we can help answer.
Great. Thank you so much. So, and I appreciate all the work that goes into this. I remember talking to a student who was, trying to increase the number of folks just to get another shot at the $250 gift card. So I know that at least the effort, people noticed that we were looking for people to fill it out. One of the key things, right, is are you getting a systematic response? Because presumably there are some people more interested in filling out a survey like this than others, and really depressed people are probably not going to take the time to fill it out. So are you missing people that way, or are you otherwise systematically missing people for one reason or another, is one of the great questions that every institution ends up asking itself. We have a couple of questions. Well, first is just a thank you for all the efforts and care that you are expressing around the well-being of our students. And then a question, is there any data that suggests why our students' mental health are doing so well? I'll just read it verbatim. Mental health are doing so well relative to our peer institutions. Is this due to student recruitment? Is our institution doing things other universities are not? Is that really true? That was mine. I just threw in there at the end. So thoughts on that?
We did in most of the categories in our 2023 administration, we were above the national, our peer group benchmark.
Healthier or above in a bad way, above in a good way?
Right. I mean, we were doing better, but by
Okay.
the question above or below is very, very different. But by and large, we were doing better than our peer group.
Mhm.
That doesn't mean necessarily that that peer group is the same size institution. So we are a very small, very focused institution in what type of community we are. We could be compared to a graduate program on a very large campus. And so the resources and things look different, and even how the perception of that being available might be different for students on those campuses. And so I think the peer group comparison, you really have to look at the size of some of the institutions that are there, which can be very different in feel. And I think students are experiencing that too on different sized campuses, of being able to know what the resources are, how to access them, and what they participate in based on where the availability of those resources are.
So, many of the Big Ten institutions struggle with the fact that their health graduate students, a part of their care is related to their college or their organization, and then they're sent off into the great undergrad world, that counts in the tens of thousands of people if they need psychiatric care or more complicated sort of resources, including determinations of accommodation and things like that are often not in the college or the program. And we're sort of the size of a college or a program, and it's all right here. And I think it is really a lot easier for an institution like ours to get our arms around some of the stuff that we're trying to do compared to places with 50,000 students.
Absolutely. And even our practitioners in student health and our student counseling center, they only see health profession graduate students. So they understand the demand, they understand the rigor of some of the programs that individuals are going through. And that might not be the case at every institution. And so I think being able to have more of that specialty and service is a benefit of students to be able to have that more direct and understanding of what their day-to-day may be and how that impacts their academic progress and ability to be successful as a student and even access. You know, we're lucky that all of our main buildings are connected. One of the populations that actually we see fill out the survey less, though, is our students who are out in the clinical environment. So those that are not in didactic programs and are out in the clinical world are the students sometimes who aren't filling out these surveys and may not be accessing resources as well because they're not just in the same building where they are every day. And so making sure that our services, so there's virtual options through the student health center and the student counseling center, all of those things really lead into our availability to make sure that even students who aren't physically on our campus can access really important services to take care of their well-being.
Let's hear from Anonymous. As a food insecure student who got denied SNAP because I cannot work on top of my academic load, I fully support and would love to see the food pantry on campus. So I know actually we have a conversation next week or the week after that with some friends
Yeah,
in
Monday, I
California and
think.
things like
Yeah.
that. I mean, like, and Madeline, I know this has been an interest of yours. Should we expound on this a little bit?
Yeah, I think so. Madeline, do you want to share from your perspective and student perspective into this as well?
Sure. I think from my perspective, personally, I moved here from San Francisco, a big city, and prior to that, I was in Boston, where you're a 5-minute walk from the grocery store. There's lots of healthy food options available. And having moved here, I've found that sometimes it's a 20-minute drive to the grocery store, depending on where you live, and balancing that with the academic expectations of a student, tying in mental health. A lot of times, if I'm going to drive somewhere for 40 minutes, I'm thinking to myself, this is time I should be studying. And you end up prioritizing academics over your well-being in some of those cases. And so part of the reason why I'm so passionate about this is because as a student, you want resources that are going to make your life easier. And having fresh produce and healthy food options on campus makes our lives easier. And I've been given permission to say this, but I'm on the e-board for the First Gen in Health Club. And even among members of the e-board, there's been expressed support for initiative like these.
Absolutely. And I think one of the other things that we think about here on campus is, you know, there's changing federal regulations coming up, and I see this as a growing need of both from a financial stability of students as well as just well-being and food security. I believe that both of these categories are going to grow in the next few years, and making sure that we're adding services and making sure that we can meet these needs here on campus. So for those of you who don't know, there is an Engage page that has all of our resources, including emergency food kits that are available right now here on campus, available for students who are in need of them. So you can find that on Engage. We're happy to share those resources, but we are looking to really bolster this and have partnerships that will allow us to have something either come to campus or be part of our own community here that will be helpful as well, and other sustainable initiatives too in the future to really add resource for students from a food stability standpoint.
Sally Madden asks, is there opportunity for employees to donate food toward a food pantry on an ongoing basis to support our students?
So we currently we have the emergency food kit, so we don't have a food pantry yet. As Shelley mentioned, it is in the works, but you are able to have a direct withdrawal from your paycheck every other week to go to specific categories, and one of those is for food security for students. So you're able to set that up, and then you can donate monetarily to the food initiatives that we do have right now.
From Anonymous, how can we work with the DNA Cafe to have healthier and more affordable options? The university subsidizes the contract. Beyond the contract itself, the university subsidizes that contract to try to make sure there are some options that are cheaper. That, if I get sushi on Monday, that doesn't necessarily mean that my sushi is being subsidized, but that there are, although I just saw Shelley grimace, so maybe that's not true. But the concept is that we are subsidizing, offerings for students that are healthy and affordable. Doesn't solve the problem, right? But they have, been willing to work with us, I think is the answer I would say.
Right.
Shelley or Amber, you want to expound on that?
And I was just going to add that, so Food for Thought, which is our cafeteria vendor, actually sits on our committee, and we have worked with them to really include things like keeping the price of soup low, because it is a very oftentimes healthy option and a good hearty meal that you can get, still includes needing financial resources in order to buy that. But even leftover soup is being sold at a lower rate that's available after hours and on the weekends through the grab and go there. And so that's a really good option as well. We've worked with them on some of the meal deals that are there. So like the 2 slices of pizza and a fountain soda. There's also half portions available of some of the items that are being done on the tour station. And I think that not a lot of people necessarily know that and see that, but the half portions are actually a pretty still a large portion, and they come at half the cost. And so that is another affordable option that we've worked with Food for Thought on. I think you'll see some additional options coming in the coming weeks too, with snack wraps and some other things coming that again provide some more nutritious options, but things that also can be at a lower price point as well.
But to, Madeline's point, prepared food is never as cheap as grocery food, right? And when my wife and I were looking at moving here, Lake Bluff seemed like a lovely place to be, but there was no grocery store anywhere nearby, which was, one of the reasons that were farther south. So more drive, but for me, but easier for a grocery store. There are a whole bunch of pluses and minuses around all of these things, and a grocery store and I think, as I recall, it doesn't bring a grocery store closer, but we actually do have shuttle trips to a grocery store, as I recall.
We do, yes, with campus safety on Wednesdays at 5 p.m. You can jump on the shuttle at the main university entrance, and it will take you out to the Target and the grocery store in that area. There's a Panera, so you can dry cleaners. You can kind of do what you need to do out in that area, and then the shuttle, they come back and they pick you up, and they'll bring you back to campus afterwards.
Which
And
probably is
what
all well and good if you don't have an exam on Thursday.
Yes.
Correct. And the other option that we are exploring with campus safety is adding an evening trip to the Aldi and to the Fountain Square area to see if we're able to coordinate that, because we know that gives additional options and a different affordability and price point as well for some of those resources. So that's something that we've started the conversation with campus safety around as well.
Anonymous says a lot of our student support falls on faculty and staff as well. How might you be considering how to support faculty and staff to reduce burnout and downstream effects on our students? And I know that Sally and company are, have a whole set of systems and resources for faculty and staff. It is a area of concern, particularly in minoritized populations where they end up taking on a larger portion of the mentorship or support burden. That is a real concern and one of the things that we have to work on.
Yeah, and I think that HR too, just from my standpoint, added the employee assistance program that has different benefits this year. So that was an addition in fall. And I think that was a great benefit for faculty and staff that was added just this fall as an additional resource. But I know there's a lot of wellness related items in the works with HR and to specifically address some of those burnout issues and issues of additional stress in the faculty and staff populations as well.
So from Anonymous, if you live on campus, Jewel Osco is an 8-minute drive and has great prices on produce. So be it. Let's see here. Scarlett Mar, are there any updates on if M3s and M4s will be able to use DePaul Recreation soon or in the future? I do not know the answer to that.
I do know that there were some conversations, or at least I was made aware that there were some conversations being accessed about that, but I don't have any updates to share. And I'm not the primary coordinator of that, but I do know that there have been some conversations to see what facilities can be utilized and at what cost or how access would work to ensure that that's seamless.
From Anonymous, many of the deals and discounts listed on the Insight page for RFU employees and students are no longer active. How often do those get reviewed and updated to ensure students know what options are actually available to them? I do not know the answer to that either.
Yes, that's the first time I've heard that some of them aren't available. I know there's several that I use on a regular basis, but I'm happy to reach out to our purchasing office team. They are the maintainers of that information just to see how often that's refreshed and if we need to do some updates there.
From Anonymous, would it be possible to invite local farmers or shops to participate, something like an RFU fresh market? I suppose all things are possible. It all is about market, right? How many people can you actually get to do some shopping? Likewise, what would people do if we had a allotment and we, grew food in a part of our space as a community garden, which personally I think would be a lot of fun, but doesn't mean it would work, but it would be an interesting thing to try on. Amber, Madeline, any thoughts about those ideas?
Yeah, I think that having an RFU Fresh Market is something that has been discussed, and students, staff, and faculty are all, I think, would be interested in that. We would definitely have to see where that could be hosted and following the university policies and making sure that everybody is safe and it's maintained would be a priority as well.
Oh, and the garden initiatives too, there's been a lot of conversation around that, and there is some planning in the works for that. Nothing to announce yet, but we are hoping that in the next year we will see more garden or new garden initiatives here on campus that would provide not only for our campus but also the community.
Don't forget to pop by from Anonymous. Don't forget to pop by the Fresh Fruit Fridays. We still have bananas and Oreos. Oreos are not fruit. We are in 1.048. Much as I love Oreos, I'm pretty
I was just gonna
sure.
say, I'm not sure how the Oreos got in there, but they are another draw. So
Yes, I
Oh
think
yeah.
it's Fresh Fruit Fridays. It wasn't exclusive to just fruit.
Well, and you get a reward for having
Yes.
fruit, right? Amy Strack asks or says, Liberty Prairie Farm in Grays Lake currently donates fresh produce to Avon Township and other food pantries. We work with them with our high schools. Karen is the ED, is a good resource. And then from Anonymous, a community garden would be fun and a fresh market would also be nice. Buy fruits from the DNA Cafe often. So I wanted to ask a question. One of the things when I look at these is like, well, so what do I take from a depression, incidence of, well, on the screening, right? And this is actually the evidence-based medicine piece I want to work on a little bit. So if your PHQ 9, if 21% of your folks score a 10 or something like that, right? In a primary care setting, the positive predictive value of a PHQ 9 is around 50%. I don't know if we count as a primary care setting, but we're certainly not a mental health setting, right? Where it would be 70% or something like that. So screening is not the same as diagnosis, I think is the thing that I want to mention, right? So people are screening positive. Probably half to two-thirds of those people really would meet a diagnosis. And if 53% of our folks have had treatment at some time, the pretest probability is pretty high for those of you who really love their Bayesian analysis. Um, but like this is sort of where the question of what are we seeing in the clinic and what are we seeing in other, like, does it all fit together? Because a survey like this could have all kinds of systematic issues, not finding the right students, there's some reason they want to answer in a particular way. The screening tool doesn't really work in our setting. There are all kinds of things, but when you put it all together, does it make some sense to you guys?
And I think for us, looking at the survey, we thought the data made a lot of sense to us. 19% of people said they accessed student counseling, and we can compare that to our data, and it's exactly the same. Similarly, the number of students who report knowing where the resource is, we see that as another question we ask on our student satisfaction survey, and the same amount of students indicate that. By and large, within the student counseling service, the main presenting factors they see from students are anxiety and depression. So that's not a surprise in graduate school, and with the growing population. But one of the things too that I like to see is that students are still accessing the resources, and they're accessing the resources at that same amount. 10 years ago, there was still a stigma in accessing services, and we were seeing more students not wanting to access the services for some reason, and we've really seen that go away. So I think for me, seeing this survey data, it actually does correlate really well with what we see on either other surveys or service utilization, what the utilization offices are reporting as common factors here on campus. So those things seem to really correlate well with other data that we have accessible here at the institution, which though only 500 students participated in the survey, it does give us a little bit of a look at what the population is thinking. Interestingly enough, for this Healthy Mind survey, which is a very long, and I always say it's kind of been an intrusive survey, it asks some very personal questions related to it, but we have a really good response rate compared to other institutions. A lot of institutions get more of that 15-16% of their population participating, and so we do see a higher level population. The one flaw, if there is a flaw, I would say is that we know that the students in the clinical environment who aren't on our campus every day are not necessarily equally represented in the survey results, because we ask that as a question.
Yeah. So what do we know about that? Because I mean, one of the things about an institution like ours is about half the students are in their clinical experiences.
Exactly. And it was 75 or 76% of students were in their didactic education. So primarily here on our main campus as part of their education right now. So we did not have an equal part participate from that clinical or away experience population. And so that's something that I think we're always thinking about, is how do we reach that population? I actually think with the new virtual health system opening here and more M3s, and upper class students coming back to campus on a more regular basis, that we will see some of those, or the access to campus being very different, and access to resources being utilized more because of just more frequent visits to our main campus.
And
well, it probably, oh, sorry, go ahead, Amber.
No, I was just going to say, as it relates to the survey, since we did change how we administered it this year by having that open link
Mhm.
instead of the panel. We were able to work with our campus partners to have more notifications go out to students, especially who are not here on campus. So while it may not be comparison, we are always looking to change that and make things more accessible for our students who are not physically here on campus.
Well, it probably cuts both ways, right? So harder to, access resources when you're away. On the other hand, if you're in the great metropolis of Chicago, there might be, depending on where you are, there might be a grocery store closer. Or public transportation might make things easier for you wherever you're trying to be comparatively. But of course, it's also often more stressful time, right? And so, yeah, I can imagine it cuts on in all the various cuts across a whole range of different domains in the survey. Well, let me ask you each, like, what's next for this data, and what's next for your plans based on this data?
I can go ahead and start. So we do have quite a few programs that have reached out to us to do presentations with their faculty and staff to go over program specific results. So Shelley and I are really looking forward to meeting programs individually and letting them know what their results showed for their programs. That's one area that we have that's coming up pretty quickly for us.
Mm-hmm. Great. Madeline?
In regards to food security and affordability for students, I'd love to continue exploring a connection with the Northern Illinois Food Bank. That's how DePaul and the University of Illinois are able to get food
Mm-hmm.
and emergency services for their students. And I think it's important to conduct a more targeted and in-depth need assessment for students at RFU to see what they're actually looking for, and if it aligns with what we're hoping to plan.
Great. Shelley?
And from my standpoint, in addition to the things that are already there, I think there's a lot of advocacy that is done for affordability here on campus, whether it's on food committees or financial aid and access of what is needed, scholarship, et cetera, to help affordability issues here on campus. We also really are looking at our services. What can we provide here on campus and build? How can we enhance services that are already here? So things like disordered eating and what kind of education and programming and body image are there programming opportunities that we can do? How can we educate our community to make sure that we're providing those services that might be newer areas for us, and new indicators on campus are really, really important for us to make sure that we're meeting the needs. Ultimately, our job is always to make sure that students have access to what they need so that they can be successful in their academic programs. And what do we build here on campus to remove those barriers and make sure that they have access to what they need, both here and in the clinical environment, to be successful in those environments. So certainly more to come. One of the things that I'm grateful for is that we get such fast results and that we're able to share them so quickly. And I look forward to providing more updates as well on enhancements and changes that we can do based on this data, helping
You know,
us.
the food insecurity piece is particularly interesting. I think everybody who's, was borrowing money to go to school remembers making, like how much food are you willing to borrow on a credit card for, right? Like how does that work? What's that going to look like for you? Um, and and that doesn't even count people who have families or who are trying to help support families in one way or another. Um, but I was kind of shocked that in this state, SNAP requires full-time students to work. On the other hand, SNAP is going to run out of money. I mean, like you can have SNAP is one of those weird things that when the money runs out at the state or the county, the money runs out. So it's kind of a bizarre system for a society like ours, but a whole nother place for advocacy. So, and I guess I was wondering from each of you, like, all right, what are you looking forward to? So we talked a little bit about the data, but what are you excited about as we come around the bend here?
Well, I think one of the things that I'm excited about is I think there's been a lot of conversation around a lot of this. There's been a lot of conversation around community garden. I think for a variety of reasons that could really be a benefit to our community, not only in the nourishment that it can provide, but also in the wellness activity that can be seen from that. So I think that those things are really exciting to be part of here on campus, and one thing that I'm certainly looking forward to more development in addition to the food stability. The other thing that I think is interesting about this food stability too is that we see more students that have the need at the end of the quarter when we know that disbursements and their allotment for the quarter is running out, and being able to be creative in how we administer programs to be able to meet that need when we know that maybe the need is greater in those last 3 or 4 weeks of a quarter than in the beginning of the quarter.
Yeah, one thing I'm looking forward to is when we had talked briefly today about the wellness area feedback. So one of the areas that our division works with is the fitness center and the study spaces. So being able to work with our students to figure out what it is that they are specifically looking for. So maybe creating focus groups around that to get more direct feedback. We have worked to update our current study spaces to make them more user friendly. And then also looking at our fitness center to see which equipment is in dire need of repair, what equipment is still being utilized that we could enhance. So those are all things that outside of food insecurity that students are looking for and asking for. So I definitely want to make that a priority as we move forward.
I'm excited as we continue to have these conversations and we get more institutional support and cooperation. We can come together and work towards a shared goal. And I think that's something really powerful.
So, the community garden piece is, I think, really interesting. And if you give me just a second, I'm going to disappear for 30 seconds and get a radish. And you guys can talk amongst yourselves. But, Shelley, you were talking about gardening as a wellness exercise. So I'm going to ask you to do that while I go get my radish.
Yeah. So if we are able to establish a garden here on campus, it might give the opportunity for faculty, staff, and students to volunteer their time to go out and help not only grow but maintain the gardens here on campus. It would be something great to just do as a wellness break, to go out and either harvest produce, take care of the plants, and being able to provide for that right here on campus, and having an environment to do that. Not everyone lives in a space where they can grow radishes or do things within their own communities. And so having space to do that here, and then being able to see the impact of that, not only on our own campus, but also in the larger community. We are part of a larger community here in North Chicago, and being able to provide additional resources and partner with other agencies around that would be a really good benefit for the entire community.
Yeah, I live in an apartment and don't really have the capacity to grow food or anything in an apartment, but I do have an office with a lot of window. Not all of us have that. Uh, I'm not growing the radish for calories. I'm growing it for fun. But there is just something to doing that kind of work for some people that is valuable. So I appreciate that concept, and I appreciate all the work you guys have been doing behind. And oh wait, Charlotte Bear says the library is developing a seed library initiative where people can donate and take seeds.
Yes.
I do think it would be a fascinating thing. I know that we have a partnership with the veterans organization around gardens and things like that, that I think would be a great way for students and faculty to collaborate with veterans and have a great experience and grow food. But I just appreciate all the work that goes into this, and appreciate everybody who filled out the survey. So, and I want to thank Shelley Brzezicki, Madeline Wong, and Amber Wyack for being with us. Thank you guys so much for all your work and being on the panel today. And thanks to all of you for joining us today. Thanks for all you do to support our faculty, our staff, and our students. It is the work of people like you that make the university such a special place to be. It is Friday. I hope you get to have a weekend. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.